Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. The bus rolled through the iron gates of Fort Ravenhill just as a thin line of sun cut across the Shenandoah Hills. Gravel popped under the tires. The air smelled like cold metal and wet pine. Captain Nora Bennett stepped down first, boots landing with a steady thud. She didn't look around for approval. She took in the motorpool, the parade ground, the old barracks, and the flag that barely lifted in a lazy wind. People watched. They didn't bother to hide it. A young private jogged up, nervous. "Ma'am, cadets are in the mess for morning chow. Sergeant Donovan said you could introduce yourself there." "Good," Nora said. "I'll do that." She moved at an even pace. No hurry. No drama. She'd seen worse climates than mountain cold and worse crowds than curious cadets. Iraq. Okinawa. Colorado. Places that taught her not to waste noise when quiet worked better. The mess hall was loud. Trays clattered. Forks scraped. A radio hissed under someone's breath. No one stood when she entered. A few offered lazy half-salutes. Most didn't bother. The room smelled like eggs, coffee, and ego. Nora set a tray on the line, took what she needed, and walked toward the front tables. At the far end, a group of seniors held court. Ryan Caldwell sat at the middle with a tired grin that said he'd seen every officer trick. He glanced up, let his friend see it, then spoke loud enough to carry. "Well, look who headquarters sent. Must be a big week." Nora didn't react. She placed her tray, aligned the cup with the plate, and sat. She ate like she had the room to herself. She didn't rush. She didn't stare anyone down. The noise dipped, then swelled again. Ryan leaned back. "Captain," he called. "Hope you like chaos for breakfast." She lifted her eyes. "Cadet, your name?" He paused. "Caldwell." "Ryan." "Thank you for introducing yourself, Cadet Caldwell." She returned to her eggs. A few snickers rolled off his table. It didn't land. She left the words alone and let the silence do the work. Silence makes people choose who they want to be. She finished, stood, carried her tray to the return rack, and turned just enough for her voice to travel. "Cadet Caldwell." He raised his chin. "Ma'am. When you address an officer during meal hours, you stand." She didn't wait for a reply. She walked out, keeping the same pace she came in with. The door closed behind her. Inside, chairs creaked but no one spoke. Outside, the morning felt colder. Nora crossed the yard toward the admin building. A stack of folders waited on her desk. Reports. Missed drills. Curfew breaks. Fights. An obstacle course that had become a joke. A commander who retired early. A line about culture issues. She read slowly, page by page, and underlined nothing. She didn't need ink to remember problems this obvious. Sergeant Luke Donovan knocked and stepped in. He looked tired in a way that didn't come from sleep. "Ma'am, formation at 0700. You want to take the field?" "I'll observe," she said. "Then the obstacle course after breakfast. Whole cohort. No skips." Donovan hesitated. "They're not used to being pushed." "They will be," Nora said. "Make sure they show up." At 0700 the lines on the parade ground wobbled like they'd been painted by wind. Boots unshined. Sleeves rolled however. Whispering that wasn't whispering. Nora walked the rows without raising her voice. She didn't stop at mistakes. She saw them, logged them, and moved on. Ryan met her eyes for a second, a smirk holding its ground. She gave nothing back. When the inspection ended, she spoke to Donovan without turning. Obstacle field. After chow. The course at Ravenhill was old. Ropes frayed. Walls chipped. Mud that never really dried. Nora got there first and watched the fog lift from the trench line. One by one the cadets arrived, talking, laughing, waiting for the easy version. Ryan took the front, sleeves high, sunglasses tucked in his collar like a badge. Nora faced them. You'll run the full course. As a team. No shortcuts. No passes. Nobody finishes until everyone finishes. Ryan let out a short laugh meant for the crowd. Teamwork. Got it. She blew the whistle. The line broke within 2 obstacles. 2 got tangled at the rope. 1 slipped face first into the pit and swore at the mud like it had insulted his family. Orders shouted over each other. Nobody listened. By the time the last pair stumbled across, people were angry at everything except themselves. Pathetic, Nora said. No shout. Just a level word that landed harder than a bark. You want uniforms and titles without discipline to hold them up. You're not a unit. You're a room full of strangers wearing the same color. Ryan's jaw set. With respect, we've been doing this. And look where it got you, she said. Tomorrow. You repeat. Every morning until you meet standard. That's not possible. I'm not asking. The wind went quiet. She turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No threat. Just a plan. That night the mess hall kept its noise low. People watched her when she entered. No one tested her. She ate, read a memo, and left. Later, from her office window, she saw cadets jogging lazy laps in 2s and 3s. Somewhere near the barracks, laughter sparked and cut off fast. She didn't need to see faces to know who was in the middle of it. Nora set her cap on the desk, turned off the light, and let the bass settle. Tomorrow would show them who they were. And by the time the sun cleared the ridge, Fort Ravenhill would learn what her silence meant. Reveille cut through the cold, and Nora was already on the obstacle field, hands in her pockets, watching fog peel off the mud trench. Donovan set cones, checked ropes, and kept one eye on her. The cadets arrived louder than they should have been for dawn. Ryan took his spot at the front, chin high, acting like the last 24 hours hadn't put a dent in anything. Full course. Team standard, Nora said. Clock starts when the last man moves. The whistle snapped and they jumped. The first wall took most of the air out of their jokes. 2 cadets stalled at the rope. Another hesitated on the balance beam and froze the line. Ryan barked a fix that no one followed. When they finally dragged themselves across, Nora clicked her watch and wrote the number without comment. Reset, she said. Again. Groans rolled down the rank. She didn't react. Second attempt was faster but sloppy. Third was slower and angrier. On the fourth, Ryan tried to break off to prove a point, and Nora cut it with 4 words. With your team, Caldwell. He swallowed the reply and stepped back in. The time still failed. Breakfast ran late. The mess hall hummed with that tired, restless energy before a storm. Outside, clouds stacked over the hills. Inside, trays clattered softer than usual. When Nora entered, people moved their eyes, not their feet. Ryan didn't look away. He tapped his fork, measured the room, and tried again. Captain, he said, voice casual. If the goal is readiness, maybe we stop pretending the course makes us soldiers. Nora took a single beat. Stand when you address an officer. He stayed seated a second too long, then pushed up, jaw tight. Chairs scraped around him. A couple cadets watched his back like they were counting on it. "Better," she said. "Finish your meal." Formation in rain gear. They looked at the windows, then at her. No one had heard the order for rain gear. She hadn't said it loud, but everyone moved. 10 minutes later the yard was a sheet of slanting water. Wind shoved at the flag. Nora stood bareheaded, uniform dark with rain, cap under her arm. "Perimeter run," she said. "No talking. Stay together. If one drops, you circle back. I'll be with you." Ryan's grin was gone. "How far?" "Until I say stop." They moved. The first lap felt like bravado. The second cut through it. By the third, mud grabbed ankles and shoved them sideways. Nora kept a steady cadence, not sprinting, not easing. When a smaller cadet slipped at the corner, she pointed. "Caldwell, take him inside the line, keep him upright." He did, without the smirk. After 20 minutes, the pack stretched thin. Nora shifted to the rear, pulled stragglers forward, and returned to the front without a word. When someone breathed, "Ma'am, how much longer?" she said, "Long enough to remember this." The rain drilled into helmets. Boots slapped water. No one laughed. She called halt near the motorpool. People bent over their knees, steam rolling off their shoulders. Nora stood in front of them, rain pushing hair to her face. "What you felt just now," she said, voice level, "is what it takes to keep a promise when no one is watching. Discipline is not a trick. It is not noise. It is endurance." Ryan stared at the ground, then up at her. The fight in his eyes was still there, but not clean. It carried doubt. She let the silence sit. Then she pointed at the obstacle course. "Form teams of 4. 1 round, no failures. If anyone drops, all 4 repeat." They moved faster than they had that morning. Ryan coached without barking. Rivera shut down a joke before it started. Klein anchored a rope with his body and didn't complain when mud took his knees. Times improved. Not perfect, but closer. After chow, Nora walked the barracks. Lockers that had been cracked stood closed. Boots lined straighter. She noted it. She didn't praise it. Progress wasn't a parade. In her office, she skimmed maintenance logs and found the same weak spots as yesterday. She penciled a short list for Donovan. "Fix these by end of week." "I'll check." At dusk the sky went from iron to black in 10 minutes. Wind hammered the windows. Mess hall again. The room quieted when she stepped in, but not out of fear. It was attention, unsure and reluctant. Ryan sat with Rivera and Klein. Tyler Vance took the far edge, eyes hot, shoulders tight. He watched her like a test he wanted to fail. Nora ate. Halfway through, a tray crashed at the back. 2 cadets laughed and stopped when they saw her head lift. She didn't stand. She said, "Clean it up," and returned to her cup. The floor got quiet again. When she finished, she stood, placed her tray on the rack, and angled toward the door. She paused just long enough to speak without turning. "Tomorrow morning, same course. Same standard. Caldwell, be sure your team understands what together means." She walked out. The storm hit harder. In the barracks, post lights hummed. Ryan sat on his bunk with his hands open like he'd meant to make fists and thought better of it. Tyler leaned against a locker, whispering to no one in particular, "She won't last." Rivera shook his head once. Klein said nothing. Back in her office, Nora set her cap down and checked the window. The parade ground was a black mirror. She felt the ache in her calves and ignored it. She wrote 3 lines on a yellow pad: "Show up, standard, team." She underlined none of them. She didn't need ink to remember what tomorrow required. Fort Ravenhill settled, but not fully. The base held its breath like it knew something else was coming. Nora did too. She locked the drawer, killed the light, and let the rain do its work. Tomorrow would not be easier. It would be honest. And when the whistle blew again, there would be fewer excuses and more eyes looking for direction. That was enough for now, but morning didn't care about enough. The rain eased before dawn, leaving the yard slick and the air cold enough to sting the lungs. Nora unlocked her office, checked the yellow pad, and folded it shut. Show up. Standard. Team. She headed out and found Donovan already at the obstacle field, kicking mud off the beam with the heel of his boot. Same plan, he said. Same standard, she answered. The cadets formed in tighter lines than yesterday. Not perfect, but less sway. Ryan stood with Rivera and Klein at his shoulders. Tyler hovered a pace away, eyes narrowed, like he was measuring where to put a wedge. Nora watched without comment. Full course. Team clock, she said. Begin on my whistle. The start looked better. Rivera called out grips for the rope. Klein held the beam steady for a smaller kid whose legs shook. Ryan paced the middle instead of sprinting to the front. They finished tired but not chaotic. The time was ugly but honest. Nora noted it and lifted the whistle for the second round. That was when a second whistle shrieked from the far side of the field. The line snapped apart like it had been waiting for the cue. Half the formation broke left toward the motorpool fence. A smear of red smoke flared at the service road and bled into the morning. Shouts rose, not orders, just noise. Someone laughed. Someone else whooped. It had the shape of a joke and the taste of a dare. Nora didn't chase the noise. She let it crest. She waited 30 seconds, counted them in her head, then put 2 fingers to her own whistle and blew once. The sound was clean and flat, and it cut through the red like a blade. Back on me, she said. Not loud, just certain. Feet stalled. Eyes found her. People drifted into place, then jogged, then ran, like their legs remembered before their pride did. When the last pair reached the start line, she said, "Congratulations. You showed me chaos. Now you'll show me endurance. Perimeter run. Together. 10 miles. If one stops, we start the mile over." Groans. A muttered curse. Tyler's smile, thin and pleased, like the mess had landed where he wanted it. Nora met his eyes for half a second and gave him nothing. They moved. Mile 1 was noise and water. Mile 2 stripped the chatter. At mile 3, the pack thinned and someone drifted. Nora slid to the rear, tapped his shoulder, and said, "With me." He found a second breath, the kind you only find when someone decides you can. Ryan rotated to the side of a kid with a stitch and told him, "Breathe on 3s." Rivera stopped a stumble without breaking his own pace. Klein counted intersections so no one had to think about distance, just numbers. By mile 5, the red haze had broken into damp ghosts over the fence. By mile 7, the yard was a loop of quiet faces and steam. Tyler tried to surge ahead to prove something no one asked him to prove. Nora said, "Back to your unit," and he bit off a reply and obeyed. On mile 8, a bootlace popped. The cadet bent to tie it and the line reformed around him without a word, hands on shoulders, quick knot, back in. No one asked whose fault. It didn't matter. They finished the 10th mile in a long, uneven arc. People bent over. Hands shook. Sweat ran with old rain. Nora looked at the shape of them, not the faces, and saw one line instead of many. "This is what together feels like," she said. "You don't have to like it. You have to respect it." She turned to Donovan. "Hydrate. Then one clean round of the course. Teams of 4, you pick them." The run had sanded down the edges. The round was the first that looked like a unit moving on purpose. Ryan didn't crowd the front. Rivera spotted, not joked. Klein anchored again. Times improved. Not pretty, but solid. When the last team cleared the wall, Nora clicked the watch, wrote the number, and said, better. Not done. They broke for chow. The mess hall smelled like coffee and soap. Conversation stayed low. Trays stopped clattering when she walked in, then started again like the room had caught itself. Ryan's table made space without thinking about it. Tyler sat 2 tables over, words tight, eyes wrong. He watched Nora the way a man watches a fuse. Afternoon was paperwork and quiet checks. Nora and Donovan walked the motorpool. A coupling on a fuel line sat crooked. She tightened it herself and set a simple note on the clipboard: verify, sign, inspect. They walked the armory. Racks cleaner. Locks correct. They checked the comms room. Headsets properly stowed for once. Progress, again. Not a parade. Near evening, Nora cut across the service road to the supply shed and found 2 flare casings crushed into the mud. She crouched, picked one up, rolled it in her fingers, and slipped it into her pocket. She didn't call anyone over. She didn't need a show. She'd seen enough to know a prank was only the test run. The sky went slate by dinner. In the mess, the mood had shifted. Not friendly, but not hostile. Tired. Focused. When she stepped in, chairs shifted like people remembered what standing meant even off duty. She didn't ask for it. She took a tray, ate, and left. Rivera's laugh came once, short and real, and stopped because eating took more air than jokes now. Back in the barracks wing, voices climbed from Tyler's room. Words like prove and won't last and old Ravenhill slipped into the hall. Klein walked past, heard it, didn't stop. He filed it somewhere behind his eyes. Ryan sat on his bunk and stared at the floor until the floor blinked. Then he stood, crossed the hall, and knocked on Nora's office door. Enter. He stepped in, stood at ease, then not at ease. Ma'am, about the second whistle. That wasn't ours. I know, Nora said. He frowned. You didn't ask who. I will when it matters, she said. Right now, it matters that your unit learned to hold a line when someone told them not to. Ryan nodded, half ashamed, half relieved. Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow, you're on point for the course, she said. Not to win. To keep your team intact. I can do that. You will do that. He left with his jaw set the right way. When the door closed, Nora took the crushed flare casing from her pocket and set it next to her pen. She wrote 3 new words under the others: listen, verify, protect. Then she circled none of them. Lights Out crawled in. The base went quiet in the way a place goes quiet when it's thinking. Tyler lay awake, staring at the ceiling, making plans that felt like control and smelled like smoke. Rivera fell asleep mid-sentence. Klein checked his watch, twice, then put it under his pillow and told himself the second whistle wouldn't happen again if people were paying attention. Ryan dreamed he was running, not from something, but with someone, and woke up with sore legs and a steady heart. Nora stood at the window and watched the floodlights paint the parade ground pale. She didn't smile. She didn't worry. She let the picture sit. The day had shown her 2 truths: the unit would move if led from the front, and someone still wanted the old noise back. Both facts mattered. Only one of them would decide tomorrow. She turned off the lamp, locked the drawer, and left the flare casing on the desk where she'd see it first thing. The base exhaled. Somewhere in the dark, a hinge squeaked, then stilled. Morning would come whether they were ready or not. Her job was to make sure ready wasn't a word, but a habit. And when the whistle blew again, there would be less room for jokes and even less room for those who needed them. It blew at 0600 sharp. The line formed faster, shoulders squared without being told. Nora took the field with Donovan and a clipboard. Ryan checked Rivera and Klein with quick nods. Tyler hovered at the edges, quiet, watchful, jaw set like he'd made a choice while the base slept. Full course. Team clock, Nora said. Caldwell, you're on point. Keep them together. They moved. The first round was steady, not pretty. The second cut 30 seconds. The third shaved a little more and held under pressure. Nora logged times without praise. On the fourth round, a radio on the admin net crackled for Donovan. He listened, face tightening half a degree, then handed the handset to Nora. "Ma'am, from brigade," he said. "Colonel Harlow. 2 days. Full inspection." Nora didn't blink. Understood. She keyed back one word, copy, then handed the radio over and blew the whistle for cool down. When she told the unit, no one cheered and no one groaned. It landed like weather you can't argue with. The morning turned into lists. Barracks checks, maintenance logs, comms inventory, weapons cleaning. Ryan took a squad through the armory with a kind of care he used to save for arguments. Rivera labeled racks without jokes. Klein cross-checked serials and caught 2 misfiles before they spread. Tyler signed out for motorpool duty with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. After chow, clouds stacked over the hills again, low and heavy. Nora and Donovan walked the motorpool. A row of vehicles stood clean, hoods up, tags clipped. A mechanic waved, then cleared his throat when he saw her. "Ma'am, fuel couplings verified, filters replaced, pressure stable on C12 and C14. "Show me C12, she said. The engine looked right. The log looked right. She initialed only the line she had eyes on. "Donovan, spot check the rest," she said and moved on. Evening drifted in with the color of steel. Lights came on early. The mess hall stayed quiet. Ryan ate like he meant to leave early and kept doing small things that said he didn't want anyone to notice, stacking trays, pushing a chair in, checking the wall clock twice. Tyler walked in late, dry hair in a wet night, and sat where he could watch Nora's table. At 21:30 Nora closed her office folder and stood at the window. The yard looked like glass. She could smell rain slipping in through an old frame. Somewhere near the motorpool a door banged and stayed open in the wind. She turned to grab her cap. Then the shout came from the dark, the kind that has no words in it. "Fire! Motorpool!" She was moving before the second shout. Donovan hit the hall in 3 strides. Alarms tripped. The engine shed through orange light into the rain like a flare. A small storage bay at the edge of the line churned black smoke and spit flame from a knocked fuel can. 2 cadets froze in the doorframe, eyes wide, doing nothing because fear had taken both hands. "Move!" Nora snapped, not loud, just enough to cut through shock. She grabbed an extinguisher, yanked the pin, and went low. Rivera, hose line. Klein, hit the power to the bay. Rivera ran, slipping once and catching himself on the hose rack. Klein vanished into the dark and came back with the lights dead and the fan off. Heat hit like a wall. The extinguisher coughed and bit at the base of the fire. It didn't quite lose, but it stopped winning. Ryan arrived at a sprint, grabbed the hose with Rivera, and drove the stream under Nora's arc. He didn't ask for permission, he checked her angle and matched it. The flame guttered, flared again, then eased. Donovan pulled 2 cadets out of the doorway by their collars and shoved them toward a hydrant wrench. "Open it." "Now," he said, and for once no one argued. It took minutes that felt like a long time to make the sound change from roar to hiss. Steam rolled out, wet and chemical. Nora kept the extinguisher on the blackest corner until it was ugly instead of bright. She stepped back, breathing hard, eyes on the can that had started it. "Secure the perimeter," she said. "No one inside until safety clears it. I want names of everyone who had access to this bay in the last 12 hours. Ryan handed the hose to Rivera and stood there while his chest hammered. "Ma'am," he said, "I can pull the sign out." He didn't wait for a yes. He ran. MPs sealed the area. Donovan flagged a medic for a kid with scorched eyebrows and pride. Nora crouched near the door and looked at the concrete. 2 thin scrape marks tracked from the storage shelf to the can's final spot. Not an accident. Not a hard thing to see if you were willing to look. Ryan came back with a clipboard and a tight mouth. "These are the names. Tyler signed the bay at 1950. No return time recorded." "Where is he?" Nora asked. Ryan glanced past her shoulder. Tyler stood near the back line, shoulders relaxed, hands empty, face set in a mask that wanted to look helpful. "Cadet Vance," Nora called. He tried to let his eyes go wide like he was hearing the name for the first time tonight and then walked forward, careful and slow. "Yes, ma'am. You were in this bay at 1950. Checked air filters," he said. "Rain came in. I closed up." "You closed the fuel can cabinet?" He frowned like he was reaching. "Must have. If it was open, someone came after me." Nora let the lie sit in the air by itself. "You will wait with the MPs. We'll talk after safety clears." He nodded too fast. "Yes, ma'am." They worked the scene by the book. When the crew chief gave the all-clear, Nora stepped inside with Donovan and 2 MPs. She pointed to the cabinet, the shelf, the scrape marks, and the can. She didn't narrate more than necessary. The facts were louder than any speech. On the way out, Donovan handed her a small, oily rag he'd found under the shelf. "Smells like accelerant," he said. "Bag it," she replied. It was past midnight when she sat down in the admin room with Tyler across the table. No lights but the ones they needed. No people but those required. She placed the clipboard with the sign out, the photo of the cabinet, and the bagged rag in a line that didn't rush. "Tell me everything you did between 1930 and 2000, she said. He ran a hand over his hair, found nothing to fix, and tried for board. "Filters on C12 and C14. Wiped the housing. Rain started. Closed up. That's it. Why is your signature on C12's log for a task you're not qualified to sign?" He blinked. "We do it all the time." "We don't," Nora said. "Not anymore." He shifted. "Ma'am, with respect, this is getting turned into something it's not." "What is it?" Nora asked. "Bad luck," he said. "Maybe Rivera left something. Maybe Klein." Nora looked him in the eyes long enough to make the next sentence hold. "If you say one more cadet's name to dodge your own, you will leave this room in cuffs." Silence. He looked at the table. He looked at the window. He looked at the floor. He did not look at himself. "Inspection is in 2 days, Nora said. If this was meant to scare me off, you picked the wrong officer." "I didn't." "Stop," she said. "You'll make your statement. MPs will secure it. Tomorrow we verify every line of every log you touched." She stood. The room seemed smaller after the door closed behind him. By 0200, the base was back to humming. The bay steamed in the rain like a thing that had quit fighting. Nora walked once more through motorpool rows. C12 sat like a question in metal. She opened the log, checked entries, and found one signature block that looked too clean. Her name. Not her handwriting. She didn't swear. She didn't sit down. She held the paper to the light and then put it flat on the bench. Donovan came up behind her and saw it without being told what it was. "Ma'am. Tomorrow we pull every log he touched," she said. "We bring in Harlow's team to witness. No shadows. If someone wants the old Ravenhill, they can own it in daylight." The storm eased near 3. Nora stood at her office window, hands on the sill, and watched the floodlights turn puddles into mirrors. She felt the ache in her legs and the burn on her throat and let both remind her what staying looks like. Ryan's reflection crossed the glass and then his knock followed. Enter. He stepped in, wet hair, tired eyes. Everyone's down, ma'am. MP's posted. Rivera's fine. Klein's fine. Vance is contained. Good, she said. He hesitated. Ma'am. I was wrong about you. He shook his head once, like the words were rough but right. You didn't yell. You just stood in the fire and didn't move. You stood there too, she said. Remember that. He nodded and left. The door closed soft. Nora looked at the forged line on the photocopy she'd made and thought of what people do when they're afraid they're losing control. They light fires. They fake signatures. They hope smoke and paper will do what discipline won't. It never lasts. Dawn was hours away, but the decision had already been made. Fort Ravenhill would face the inspection with everything on the table, and anyone who tried to drag the base backward would do it in the open. The whistle would blow again. When it did, there would be no room for old noise, and there would be nowhere left to hide, and the sun came up like it agreed. The air was clear, the flag snapped clean, and the yard sounded like boots instead of gossip. Nora met Donovan at the motorpool at 0700 with a stack of photocopied logs and a quiet plan. Ryan arrived with Rivera and Klein, faces steady, uniforms squared, eyes set on work, not drama. Tyler showed up flanked by 2 MPs, jaw tight, saying nothing because there was nothing safe to say. Verification line, Nora said. Every log, every signature, every repair. We do it in the open. She split the stacks. Donovan assigned stations. Ryan took the file table, cross-checking entries against actual work completed. Rivera matched parts pulled against inventory. Klein verified signatures against the training roster, 1 page at a time. No one performed. They just did the job. By mid-morning, the quiet did most of the talking. A block on C12 sheet carried Nora's printed name, but not her hand. A filter replacement timestamp didn't match the supply sign-out. An inspection line marked complete had no corresponding tool checkout. Klein circled each mismatch with a thin, neat mark and slid it down the table. Ryan moved them into a column labeled Verify under Witness. Rivera brought over a small parts bag that should have been empty and wasn't. Numbers lined up where they shouldn't and failed where they should. It painted its own picture. Nora didn't raise her voice. She read, nodded, and kept the line moving. When Tyler tried to speak from his chair, she said, "You will answer questions when the inspector is present," and returned to the next page. He rubbed his palms against his pants and stared at a spot on the floor. Just before noon, black SUVs rolled through the gate. Colonel Richard Harlow stepped out first, expression like granite, eyes moving over everything and missing nothing. 2 officers followed with clipboards. He met Nora at the edge of the yard. Captain Bennett. Sir. Full inspection. Readiness, maintenance, discipline. We're ready to be seen, Nora said. He gave a small nod and started with drills. The formation hit clean marks. Commands carried without echo. Movement snapped without noise. Harlow walked the rows and stopped in front of Ryan. Cadet. Last time this unit ran a readiness drill without notice. 3 days ago, sir, Ryan said. Conducted by Captain Bennett. Full compliance. Harlow looked at Nora for half a second, said nothing, and moved on. He walked the barracks. Beds tight, lockers squared, contraband absent. He checked comms. Headsets labeled and stowed. Then he entered the motorpool and the air shifted. This was where a base passed or broke. Nora stepped to the verification line. Sir, we've been auditing maintenance logs under witness since 0700. There are discrepancies. We have them flagged. Show me, Harlow said. She laid out the stack in order, the forged signature block on C12, the mismatched timestamps, the parts ledger that didn't track. She didn't add adjectives. She did not guess. She pointed to scrape marks photographed near the cabinet and to the bagged rag Donovan had found. Harlow glanced at Tyler. Cadet Vance, you signed this bay out. Yes, sir, Tyler said. 4 filter checks. I secured the area. After me, anyone could have. Stop, Harlow said, not loud, and the room listened. He turned to Ryan. Cadet Caldwell, you assisted during the fire? Yes, sir. You witnessed process here today? Yes, sir. Your assessment, Harlow said. Ryan swallowed once, then kept his eyes forward. The logs were altered, sir. The signature isn't Captain Bennett's. The times don't match parts. The cabinet doesn't move itself. That's not bad luck. Harlow faced Nora. Do you claim the signature? No, sir, she said. And I don't need to. The record fails on its own. Harlow signaled to the MPs, Cadet Vance will be removed from duty pending investigation for falsification and negligence. He will make a formal statement. He will not speak to other cadets. Tyler stood, the fight gone from his face, and let the MPs guide him out. The door closed, and the motorpool felt bigger. The inspection continued. Harlow watched a weapons cleaning drill that ran smoother than any in weeks. He cut across the yard to watch a comms check and timed the response with his own wristwatch. He stopped a junior cadet and asked 2 blunt questions about procedure. The kid answered without tripping his tongue. Harlow didn't smile, but his shoulders loosened a fraction. At 1600, he met Nora outside the admin building with his team. He looked down at a clipboard, checked one last line, and then spoke. Fort Ravenhill passes inspection, he said. Readiness is sufficient. Discipline is improved. Maintenance requires continued oversight under the system I observed today. Recommendation, commendation for corrective leadership under stress. Donovan exhaled like he'd been holding air since 0600. Ryan stood straighter. Rivera let a grin slip and then swallowed it. Klein looked at the ground, then up, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to feel relief. Thank you, sir, Nora said. Harlow studied her a beat longer. You didn't break them, he said. You stood long enough for them to bend toward the work. Keep doing that. Yes, sir. The convoy rolled out. The yard didn't cheer. It breathed. When Nora turned toward the parade ground, the cadets were already forming without being told. Ryan stepped forward, saluted sharp, and held it. Fort Ravenhill stands ready, ma'am. Nora returned the salute. It does now. The line broke into smaller groups. People moved with a kind of quiet that didn't come from fear. Soreness and pride lived in the same walk. Nora crossed to the mess hall for evening chow. Conversations rose and fell, not loud, not hushed, just normal. Rivera brought his tray past Tyler's empty seat and didn't look at it long. Klein slid a maintenance schedule draft across to Ryan, who read it like the next day mattered more than this one. Later, outside, the sky went soft and then dark. Nora stood near the steps and let the base move around her. Ryan approached, stopped at a respectful distance, and spoke like he meant each word. Ma'am, I was wrong about what strength looks like. You were learning, she said. Now teach it forward. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. She watched him go, then walked the motorpool one more time. The base smelled like water instead of smoke. The forged signature sat in a folder with witness marks and dates. It would go up the chain. The habit would stay here. Back in her office, she wrote a short note on a yellow pad, standard held under fire. Team chose the work. Trust the quiet. She set the pen down and let the room go still. Fort Ravenhill wasn't finished. It wasn't perfect. But tonight, it was honest. The old noise had a place to go, and it wasn't the yard. The next whistle would blow tomorrow, and there would be laps, logs, and drills. People would get tired. People would get better. And the bass would keep bending toward the kind of strength that doesn't need to be shouted to be real. That strength didn't need shouting, and the next morning proved it. Reveille hit, and the lines formed without a single order repeated. Nora walked out with Donovan and didn't carry a clipboard. She didn't need one today. Ryan stood at the front with Rivera and Klein on his flanks. Faces were clear, uniforms straight, eyes steady. No speeches. No warm-up. Nora lifted one hand. Unscheduled readiness drill, she said. Everything you've trained. Whole base. Move on my signal. She dropped her hand and Fort Ravenhill moved like one body. Barracks cleared, aisles left clean. Squads hit the armory on time, tags checked, weapons issued, bolts verified, racks relocked. Comms lit in sequence. Rivera read back call signs without stumbling. Klein closed the loop on the motorpool and called status on vehicles with simple yes or no answers. No one tried to decorate the truth. They kept time, not theater. Nora walked, not ran. She cut across lanes, said little, and fixed only what mattered. A sling twisted wrong, she straightened it. A headset mic a finger too high, she lowered it. At the range, Ryan stopped a cadet before he could rush a safety step and made him do it right with 4 words, again, by the book. The kid nodded and did it. No one clapped. They just moved to the next task. Halfway through, a sudden squall pushed cold air across the yard. Flags snapped. Dust spun. Old Ravenhill would have used the weather as an excuse to slip. This one narrowed its focus. Teams shifted lanes to avoid a slick patch near the shed. The schedule slipped by 2 minutes and came back by 3 because people adjusted without drama. Donovan glanced at Nora and didn't say a thing. He didn't have to. By midday, the drill rolled into the obstacle field. Nora pointed at the start and said, teams of 4. All finish or none finish. Ryan didn't take the front this time. He stayed in the middle, where trouble starts, where leaders earn it. Rivera timed handoffs on the rope like a worker, not a showman. Klein braced the beam for a smaller cadet whose legs shook, and the kid made it because someone steady was already there. Times weren't perfect, but the movement was honest. When a boot stuck deep in the trench, 3 hands pulled, and no one asked who had the cleanest uniform after. They finished the circuit and filed back to the parade ground in enough order to matter. Nora stood on the platform. She looked at the shape of the formation, not the faces, and saw a unit that knew what it was. She kept her tone even. Readiness complete. You met the standard because you chose the work. That's the whole idea. Silence held a second, the good kind. Then she added, there's no ribbon for what you did today. There's also no excuse not to do it tomorrow. Ryan stepped forward a pace. Ma'am, request permission to address the unit. Go ahead, Nora said. He faced the line. You know what broke us before. Noise. Ego. Shortcuts. We're done with that. If one of us slips, the rest of us close the gap and fix it. No speeches. Just the work. He stepped back. It wasn't fancy, and that's why it landed. Nora gave a single nod. Dismissed to recovery. Logs due by 1800. Rivera, Klein, schedule with Donovan for weekly verification. Caldwell, you own tomorrow's course. The yard loosened, not sloppy, just human. Laughter came back in small pieces. People walked with sore shoulders and clear heads. In the mess, trays moved without anyone banging them for attention. Tyler's old chair sat empty and stayed uninteresting. The base had outgrown the need to stare at it. Late afternoon, Nora took one more walk. Barracks rows even. Motorpool tagged right. Comms room neat. She stopped at the office window and watched the flag pull tight and then relax in a steady wind. Donovan stepped in, quiet. "Good day," he said. "Honest day," she answered. He nodded. "They'll keep it if we keep it." "We will," Nora said. Evening brought a thin sunset over the hills. Ryan knocked and stood in the doorway. "Ma'am." "Caldwell." "About tomorrow's course," he said. "I want the slowest 4 as the pace team. If they finish clean, the unit repeats once more with them up front." "Do it," Nora said. "Teach them to pull, not drag." He smiled a little, the right kind. "Yes, ma'am." He left, and the hallway went back to the soft sounds of a base that knows where its edges are. Nora sat, opened her yellow pad, and wrote 3 plain lines: show up, keep standard, stay together. She didn't underline them. She didn't need to. Night settled. The generators hummed. Somewhere a door clicked shut and stayed shut. Rivera finished a parts count without being asked. Klein taped a simple checklist to the motorpool board and signed the bottom with small writing that told everyone it mattered. Ryan walked the empty obstacle field once, not to admire it, but to think through tomorrow's order of movement. He left no footprints where he didn't need to step. Nora stood again at the window and let herself breathe. No banners. No speeches. Just a base that had decided to act like one. She thought of the first day in the mess, the tray, the looks, the quiet. She thought of rain, smoke, forged ink, and a room that chose to tell the truth when it counted. She thought of how strength had looked like noise for so long that people forgot it could look like calm. She turned off the light and reached for the door. The lesson was simple enough to carry without paper. Leadership isn't the volume you speak at, it's the distance you're willing to go without letting go of the standard. Fort Ravenhill had learned it the hard way and kept it the right way. Tomorrow, the whistle would blow again. They would form up and move, not because someone shouted, but because they'd finally decided who they were. That was the point. That was the work. And for the first time since she arrived, Nora knew it would last.